Welcome to In the Lab, a podcast from Luminate, the leading provider of data and insights for the entertainment industry. I'm Andrew Wallenstein, Chief Media Analyst with Luminate Intelligence.
1 year ago, Vice TV made a big shift. A brand best known for its irreverent attitude and hard-hitting news focus pivoted the cable channel in the direction of sports documentary programming. To check in on how Vice's rookie year in sports has gone, we have Vice TV president Peter Gaffney to walk us through the strategic rationale for the change, how it's been going, and what it means for the future. Thanks for joining me, Pete.
It's great to be here, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So I want to start by understanding the Vice audience, and we've got some interesting data points here. When we're talking about the total Vice audience across 193 million monthly average cross-platform reach, that's one thing. But this conversation's really focused on the Vice TV cable channel audience, where you guys have identified 300,000 super fans. It sounds like that's your core. Tell us about that audience.
So, while we have more viewers come to the channel on a monthly basis, millions of people have come to the channel monthly. That 300,000 super fans, those are the people who are Vice fans. They come to us about 8 days a month. They watch for about 90 minutes at a time. So we've defined those people who come to us often, watch for a long time. Those are what we call our sort of our core, our gold audience, or our super fans. Yeah.
And I guess the key question then is what about them did you know that made you feel like focusing on sports was right for this audience?
So the decision to move towards sports was manyfold, right? One, it had to do with the way the media world is moving, right? And television, and particularly the cable bundle, has moved towards a sports-centric focus. And that's what's holding the bundle together in many ways. And the cable bundle is, you can see it sort of unbundling in places and rebundling in other places. But sports has become a prime currency of that bundle and of television in general, right? You see it across streaming and YouTube, and wherever you look, sports is a growing genre. And so from that standpoint, we felt that it was a good move for us as changes happen within the TV landscape and the media landscape. We thought it was an important thing for us to focus on. But we also knew that our audience was interested in sports. Um, Not particularly as our CEO, Adam Stotsky says, not necessarily the stick and ball of it all, but the culture of sports, right?
Right.
And so we've had success in the past with our signature series is called Dark Side of the Ring, which is a documentary series all about the world of professional wrestling. And those stories, that series has been on now for 6 seasons. We haven't announced it yet, but we have another season coming next year. So we've had that. We've had other series focused on football. We did a Dark Side of Football season. We did a basketball series with LeBron James's Spring Hill Company as well. We've worked with The Rock's company as well to do other sports content. So we've had it on the network, and plus we had a whole sub brand called Vice World of Sports in the past also. So we knew that our audience was interested in sports, but we also knew that it wasn't necessarily going to be the type of sports that you see on Barstool or ESPN or Netflix necessarily.
So
So,
1 year in,
yeah.
give us examples of what kind of sports we're seeing, because this isn't, MLB or NFL.
Right. Well, look, we want to work with the MLBs and NFLs of the world. And it's been a tricky thing for us, right? And we've worked with them. So we've done two series, for instance, with Omaha Productions. One following John Calipari through last season's run of Arkansas into the NCAA tournament. And we did another series with Omaha just this fall called NFL Classics, after further review, which basically took the Manning cast, which Omaha produces for ESPN, and applied it to classic NFL games. So it was a collaboration between Vice, Omaha, and the NFL, where we had guests doing Manning casts, but looking at great games from the past, Super Bowls, playoff games, some great regular season games as well. So we have worked with those big leagues and entities, but we also are, what we value and what we think is important for us is to be independent and to be alternative and unique and fearless and unfiltered. Those are a lot of the key words that we have always used and have always been part of the Vice DNA. And that combination of sports plus the Vice DNA is what we are also leaning into. So, for instance, we have uh, a new series that we're launching in December that was just announced yesterday called Out of Bounds. And it's going to be a series of documentaries, not told in a weekly format, but on a quarterly or something like that basis, where we're telling stories that others may not tell. So, for instance, the first one we're launching is the story of Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson,
Hmm.
which we know the story of what has happened with the Hard Knocks around Bill Belichick that was canceled, and then Hulu ordered the same series, and then that was canceled. Um, and part of the reason I think it was because one of the headlines I saw when Hulu ordered that series about Belichick was that it was going to be the Belichick infomercial, and we don't want to do that. So our story, our 2 hour documentary is unfiltered, it's unauthorized, but it's not salacious. And that's what Vice tries to do. We tried to go deeper. We try to tell those things that others aren't necessarily telling, um, and doing things in a unique and authentic way. And that's the Vice way, and that's what we're trying to do.
So I totally follow the logic of why it's made sense to move Vice TV in the direction of sport. But I do think there's also a risk involved here in the sense that when you look at the data on the amount of so-called shoulder content in sports, the kind of content that's not the games themselves, but it's documentaries and other unscripted formats about sports content, a lot of growth in recent years. I think it dates back to the success of the Michael Jordan documentary on ESPN, and it's just been endless since then. And I gotta wonder, though, as to some degree, does that mean there's also a lot of competition in the marketplace for what you're trying to do?
Sure, there is, right? And when you look at the volume of shoulder sports content over the last 5 years, it has continued to grow. Um, and a lot of that content, when you look at it, right, a lot of it's on the streamers. And so you have the quarterbacks and the starting fives. And there was another one about the Olympic basketball team, Court of Gold, I think it was called.
Hmm.
In addition to the F1 series and to Drive to Survive and the golf series that Netflix has done, and so there's a lot of content out there, right? Now, but again, what we're trying to do is do things a little differently. Again, we will work with, excuse me, sorry, we will work with the leagues and try to tell those stories. But we also talk to the leagues and say, be honest, when we did this Bill Belichick series, I spoke to the NFL, spoke to NFL Films, told them we were doing this, and said, look, we're going to tell this story. We may not work with you on this. We may not license footage from you on it, but it's a story that we think is an important one to tell, and that's all well and good. Most of what you see on the streamers are authorized, and uh, they're a little more controlled, I will say,
Yeah.
right? Because when you're dealing with the leagues they want to tell stories in certain ways, right?
Yes.
So, um, but we want to maintain that independence and be sure again work with the leagues when we think it makes sense, but be independent when we think it makes sense also. And I think that is where we can differentiate ourselves and stand out, telling those stories that I think is a white space in the world of sports storytelling. Yes, there are some independent documentaries, and HBO will do some, and so those are being done too. But most of what I've seen are authorized and with in association with a lot of the leagues. And while we'll do that, we also want to work independently, and that's where I think we stand out.
Well, it's not also just that there's so much of this content coming into the space, it's that the content is coming from so many different players on the streaming side alone. I mean, any streaming service worth its salt nowadays has a heavy component of this content. Do you feel that this sort of vice, unauthorized kind of approach to sports is the differentiation that's required to succeed in this market?
Yes, I do. And I'll add to that, right? It is about, we hear a lot about, sports and culture and sports as culture. We just actually yesterday had a workshop where we were talking through, what is the Vice Sports brand exactly, right? And certain times I'll say, we have moved ourselves closer to sports when I think what we want to look at is how do sports work with Vice, right?
Hmm.
And it's a it's not just the story of a game, but it's the story of, what's going on in culture while that game is going on. And what are the things that were going on perhaps behind the scenes that were going on that affected how the world reacted to the sport, right? Um, so I think that is how we want to handle sports, is to have it's more than just the sport. It's about the culture around it, right? There's a series we're doing next year we haven't announced yet about the world of soccer and in the United States, and covering sort of how soccer has had its ups and downs since the World Cup in '94, I believe, where we hosted, and to next year between that time. And a lot of this documentary is going to be about the American culture and how that was changing, and how soccer fit in or didn't fit in the world of sports. So it's more than just the sport, and that's the other thing I think we bring to the table as well.
Speaking of soccer, my firm Luminate did a count of all the different kinds of sports that are reflected in this boom of sports shoulder content. And soccer was at the top, football not far behind, the usual suspects. And so I'm wondering, is there much strategy or thought in terms of where you guys are focusing? Are there places to zag where too many others zig?
Yeah. Um, yes, I think so for sure. So, in addition to uh, the documentary content that we're making, the unscripted content, we're also doing more live sports as well. And when you think about the Vice brand, uh, you think about, again, some of those key words being alternative and, speaking truth to power, and being uh, uh, a little more aggressive in storytelling. And so the live sports that we've gravitated to and the ones that have done better for us are the ones that are a little more alternative, a little more and look, we, obviously, Vice is not going to be able to compete. Vice TV will not be able to compete with the NBCs of the world and the Netflixes of the world in terms of sports rights. So we have leaned into things like bare knuckle boxing, which has a very, the word that I use a lot is visceral. There's a visceral nature of that sport. Vice is a visceral storyteller. And so we just announced a deal with the PFL, which is an MMA league, that we're doing a number of fights with them next year. We also had a deal this year. We aired Big Three basketball. So we are looking at the alternatives to a lot of the major sports where we think that there's an audience for it. Bare knuckle boxing has actually done quite well for us. And we want to continue to lean into those types of things as too. Look, we're always going to tell stories that are a little different. And I think honestly, it's those stories that people are going to come to us for, and they will, because honestly, they can get, you know, football documentaries almost anywhere, right?
Sure.
It's the story about soccer in Central America that will tell stories like that as well, and other sports from around the world, or the ultras, which are these sort of gangs of sports as well that you find in soccer stadiums around the world. We're developing a documentary around that as well, right? And you know, we'll also tell, for example, sports betting, as we know, has become huge in the
Sure.
United States and the world. And we've been approached by a number of different production companies about telling stories about sports betting. Some of them are romantic. Some of them are looking at some of the biggest bookies in Vegas and who makes the most money, right? So you have that on one side, but you also we understand that there are issues with sports betting and how it compromises the sports and how it affects people's lives as well. So we've chosen to do another episode of our Out of Bounds series, which again we're launching next month, on sports betting to look at warts and all view of sports betting. Now, that type of story, other outlets that are doing sports may not feel comfortable to be able to tell. But we feel we have to tell those types of stories. That's what.
On the live side, I think it's smart what you're doing. I've never understood in general why there isn't more investment made by companies like yourselves in the so-called second or third tier sports that with the right nurturing, there's could be just a tremendous amount of growth.
Yeah, and nurturing is a key word, right? Because some of those sports do end up on ESPN, and they end up on the Ocho and on Fox FS3, and but they don't get nurtured. And we're not going to have thousands of hours of sports per se, but we'll have hundreds of hours of sports. And those sports, we will work very closely with these tier two leagues, tier three leagues, to help foster growth. We see it as a partnership where if we're growing and the sport is growing, we can grow together. And that's an important aspect when we get into a partnership with a league and a sport.
So, like I was saying, earlier on, you guys are a year into this now. You've learned some things. Maybe there
Yeah.
were some surprises along the way. Maybe you're at a place you didn't expect to be based on those learnings. Tell
Yeah.
me more about that.
I think the biggest learning we've had, well, there are a number of different learnings, but the biggest learning I'd say is we have to lean into the brand, into the Vice brand. That's what our audience, those 300,000 who come to us every month and who are our sort of gold fans, right? They want depth. They want storytelling that goes behind the curtain. And they want something a little edgier as well. Edgy is an important aspect of what Vice does also. Just look at the name Vice, right? So um, the broader we've been, the more, I'm not going to use, not generic, but the more sort of the broader stories we've told that don't lean into that brand, that we haven't found those to be as successful for us. So that's an important aspect of what we do. And we will continue. We're going to lean further into that brand, right? Um, uh, we we also look at a total audience number across multiple platforms, and we think the because we're able to reach so many people across YouTube and Instagram, Snapchat, et cetera, um, we feel that that looking at that audience and migrating audiences across those platforms are important too. So we see what we've learned is that we might put an episode of something on the channel. It's tough sometimes given the limited marketing budgets that TV channels have now. It's sometimes hard to get an audience to come to us on television. So as much as we can, we try to use YouTube and our socials, etc., to uh, preview shows or put full episodes of shows on those platforms as well to help one get exposure for the series, but also to help migrate audiences back to TV. The probably the most successful show we had this past year was a series about Rick Pitino and St. John's. And we had an opportunity last year as we were trying to develop out. Do we do one of these all access follow doc series? And we were debating, who would be who would be the right coach to follow, the right team to follow. I had dinner with Rick Pitino in Queens last September or so, and he basically told me, I'm not going to hold back. I tell it like it is. And he was tapping into exactly what he, I guess, knew I was going to react to positively because he understands the Vice brand, and it worked extremely well for us. Um, it got the Vice Sports brand out there. Um, Multiple locker room speeches of his went viral. The team did extremely well, so we lucked out from that standpoint. And he got onto the Jimmy Fallon show talking about our show, and so we were able to amplify the Vice Sports brand by attaching ourselves to great talent like Rick Pitino, who, while a college basketball coach, is a vicey, as we say it, a vicey character, and that worked really well for us this past
Are
year.
there other sports individuals out there, whether coaches, players, whatnot, that you would identify as particularly vicey?
Hmm. Uh, it's a good question. There are a lot of them out there, right? Some of whom I can't even tell you yet that we're working with because we can't announce it.
Close to
But
the vest.
there are, we like the rebels, right? We like those, there's a series we are developing and we haven't announced yet, but it looks at the characters in sports that are controversial. That's too easy a word, but those who inspire love and hate, right? And we explore, why are these characters hated, right? And yet beloved at the same time. And it's about fandom, and it's about the characters themselves and how they sort of push the envelope. So we love the frankly, the Caitlin Clarks of the world, the who the Alex Rodriguez's of the world, right? Who inspire. They're polarizing. Those types of characters for us are ones that we think feel edgy, right? And we think can bring an audience to us, and they fit with our brand.
And so I'm also wondering, as we have this conversation at the end of 2025, what are some upcoming Vice programs, whether Vice TV programs in Q1 or beyond, that we should keep an eye on that we haven't mentioned that are kind of really definitional for this new direction, not so new direction?
Yeah, I have to be careful about certain things we haven't announced yet. But I will say that expect another season of Dark Side of the Ring next year. That's a series that is a gift that keeps on giving for us. I mentioned this soccer series we have coming up, not yet announced, but it looks at American soccer over the last 30 plus years and beyond to look at sort of how we've evolved as a nation uh, uh, from a soccer point of view. We did a series last year with Christopher Mad Dog Russo. You know Mad Dog,
Commentator.
who we also see as a Vicey character. He's a no holds barred um, pundit who, he's not afraid to say what he thinks. And we did a series called The Verdict last year that looked at um, the question of who was more responsible for the success of the Patriots. Was it Belichick or Brady? And so we had a 3 hour debate of that story, right? We are looking to bring that series back, but look at other great debates in the world of sports too, right? Um, and so those are some of the things we have coming up. We're going to do more out of bounds stories for sure. We're going to, we also have some non-sports series as well on the channel because we don't want to, that have been successful in the past for us that we won't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have a series on some of the on gangs in the United States, not a sports show, but we are looking to, as I mentioned a little earlier, look at gangs and sports, which we think is an interesting combination. And these ultras, which are these gangs that show up to big soccer events, right? And in addition to that, we're working with leagues like the National Hot Rod Association to do content around their season next year. We are doing some content. A lot of our content, we work with our own Vice Studio to produce. They produce our Dark Side series. They're doing our Out of Bounds series as well, but we go to third-party production companies as well. We're looking to do more with Omaha. We are working with Skydance Sports as well on a series that is coming out in January, all about the greatest comebacks in sports. So it's a variety of different things. We are looking at having next year probably about 100 hours of unscripted content and upwards of 200 hours of live content. So, we had about 200 hours total this year. We're upping that to 300 plus hours probably next year.
Well, I'm going to wish you luck then with the sophomore season of the Vice TV sports strategy. Peter, thanks for walking us through what's been a really interesting evolution for the brand.
It's been a pleasure talking to Andy. We have a lot of big plans. We're excited about the future of Vice Sports and Vice TV. Thank you.